Good morning. Kimmy, it doesn't surprise me you're up early baking something. Speaking of baking, there's a Randy Baker and a Ruth Baker. Good morning, everybody. It is Friday. This is not typical for me to be on here on a Friday, but here I is. Good morning, Deb. Well, I can't even do this very well, so there's Vicky. Hi, Vicky. The bells are here. That's great, Brenda. Good to see you guys. Well, what happened last Monday was I started to get on. I actually got on 15 minutes early just to see if everything was working, and it wasn't. And for some reason, it said I had no internet connection. And so I called Nick and said, help, tech guy, I don't know anything about this. And we had just had an update overnight, an update on our phone. Pam and I both had an update. And it was actually her birthday last Monday. And she caught up with me. We're the same age now again. And so I called Nick, and he didn't have any idea what was going on. And I ended up having to go to my provider to try to figure it out. And it was just simply that I needed to completely take Facebook off my phone and then add Facebook back on. And that took care of the problem. So about Wednesday, I knew the problem was fixed and I'd be good to go today. So Monday's my normal time, but today I'm wrapping up the week here on Friday. I believe Rick will be back with you tomorrow morning. And just want to let people know too, as far as the work down at the south end, south side relief from the flood. Tomorrow will be our last day to prepare the food and serve of our August commitment. And so again, call the church today if you're able to come and help prepare, help serve. They can use your help, I'm sure. And if you would call the church and let them know you're coming and what time, they'll set that all up with you, and we can know who we're counting on and who to expect. So it would be wonderful if you could do that if you so desire. Tomorrow morning, I think we're going to get a break in the weather. So from mid 90s maybe down to low 80s tomorrow. So be a great day to serve. Always a great day to serve. I don't know if you've ever had a song come into your head. I'm sure many of you have. The way my mind works, a lot of times somebody will say something and it triggers a song. It triggers a phrase from a song. But I don't know where, about a month ago, a song out of the blue. I'm confident it wasn't on the radio and nobody was singing it. But out of the blue, a song from the 1980s was brought to my memory, and it kind of stuck in there. And so we'll talk about that. The author's name was Scott Wesley Brown. Scott Wesley Brown put out some Christian music in the 80s, I believe. And to this day, he's still a worship leader somewhere down south. But there was a song called This Little Child. And if that's your assignment, if you so desire, Google Scott Wesley Brown, This Little Child, and listen to that. Love for you to do that sometime today. And if you want to catch me tomorrow at church and just tell me what you thought of this song. It's kind of a prophetic song, I believe, 1980 something, and worth a listen. Listen to the words. This Little Child, Scott Wesley Brown. Anyway, Scott Wesley Brown had another song. So I used to listen to this on my mail route years and years ago. Tooling around Savannah in my little mail Jeep, I had a little cassette player. Most of you remember those. And it would play one side of the cassette and then automatically go to the other side and play the other side. But if you wanted to hear the song, and that was one that I listened to over and over, you'd have to rewind back to the beginning of that song. There was another song on that called My Treasure. And My Treasure just has, that's the song that got stuck in my mind, My Treasure by Scott Wesley Brown. And I guess I've just been pondering treasures, and back in the day we would get, I know it's the lottery today, people think about winning the lottery, what would they do with the winnings? Back in the day it was Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes. Most of you might remember the Publishers Clearinghouse, and Ed McMahon would, and they would come to your door with a big check on TV and knock on your door, ring your doorbell, and present you with this huge check. And so from year to year, when those things would come up, you'd ponder, what would I do with the money if I won this, And treasure hunting has become quite a deal, from sunken ships, and they have huge expensive boats and gear to go out and find these sunken ships. I think of a wagon train or something, a stagecoach with a gold going to a fort or whatever you see on the Western sometimes. There are all kinds of ways. You think of Jed Clampett shooting his gun into the ground and the oil coming up. All kinds of treasures out there. But you don't really think about that in Jesus' day. I don't think about that. But he used, in a parable, he used that exact terminology. Matthew 13:44 says this: "The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy, he went and sold all he had, and he bought that field." And in Jesus' day, I don't think about a treasure being out in a field, but obviously, Jesus was speaking in parables so that people would relate to it. So obviously, it had happened. There was the possibility that somehow a treasure had been hidden in a field. So I find that fascinating in itself. But, what would you do with the winnings? I can remember thinking I'd help my family, friends, pay off houses, that kind of thing, give to the church, obviously, and just all the things. But can you imagine if there was really like a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? Can you imagine? You know how storm chasers are, how they have all this equipment now, this modern equipment, and man, if there was a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, can you imagine the equipment people would have to find out when the rain was just going to be right, so the rainbow would be there and the equipment to go race for the gold afterwards? It would be crazy. This song, The Treasure, says this: "I don't need to follow any rainbows or search the world to find my dream come true. I don't need a lucky star to guide me, for I found my treasure in you," meaning Jesus. "I don't need to pray a prayer unanswered or make a wish that will never ever come true, for I have found my answer. My every wish is you." The song, to me, nailed it. Jesus is the treasure, the kingdom of heaven. When we say the kingdom of heaven, it's not just the place heaven, it's the kingdom. The kingdom includes the king of kings, right? The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy, he went and sold all that he had and bought that field. Now, I talk about the cross quite a bit. It's a very big part of my understanding of following Christ. He says, if any man wants to follow after me, pick up his cross and follow me. Come after me. Okay? Something like that. Look that up. That's wrong. But that's the gist of it. Pick up your cross and follow him. I think the problem is when we talk about the cross, our emphasis is immediately on the wrong place. Now that sounds alarming to some, but the emphasis in picking up your cross is following Jesus. If you pick up your cross and don't follow Jesus, well, 1 Corinthians 13 puts it like this: if I give my body to be burned but have not love, I've gained nothing. If you pick up your cross and don't follow Jesus, you're just having a tough workout. The key is following him. Jesus Christ, is always the focus. Jesus didn't embrace the cross. He didn't cling to the cross. Jesus, the Word of God tells us, endured the cross. For why? For the joy set before him. We are not called to embrace or enjoy the cross, we're called to endure our cross as well. To endure the cross without following Jesus is ridiculous. But for the joy set before us, we can endure the cross just like he did. That is the key always. It's your focus. It's your heart. And when we don't understand the treasure, then what we already have is important. This man who found the treasure in the field, I'm sure he thought his possessions were very important. And he clung to those until he found the treasure. And then all he had paled in comparison. All he had lost its value. He went and sold it so that he could gain that treasure. And when we will focus on the treasure, when we understand that Jesus Christ, what a treasure he is, then the laying down of our lives is nothing to attain the treasure before us. It's all in perspective. It's all in understanding. I want you to think about this. There's a story of a young ruler who came before Jesus, and he said, "Good teacher, what must I do to be saved?" And Jesus said, "Sell all that you have." And you know the story. It's in at least 3 of the 4 Gospels. And we focus a lot on rich because that's how the story goes on being rich and entering the kingdom of heaven. But I want you to consider this. It's all about perspective. The first words out of the young ruler's mouth when he got to Jesus was, "Good teacher." If we thought Jesus was just a good teacher, would we follow him? Would we lay down our lives? Would we give up our riches? I say not. I say if the young ruler would have known Jesus hadn't died and overcome the grave, risen from the dead, we have that advantage of looking back and seeing what happened and seeing the result and seeing who Jesus really was. If the rich young ruler had known who Jesus was, and instead of good teacher had come to him and said, "Lord and Savior, King of Kings," I believe the rich young ruler would have laid down his possessions and followed him. So my prayer for you this week, my prayer for me this week, my prayer for all of us, is that we recognize the all-surpassing treasure of knowing Jesus. And consequently, instead of striving to die to ourselves, striving to overcome this and that, we become eager to lay down our lives in order that we might fully and completely embrace him and all that he has. He's the only true and lasting treasure. It's no wonder that Matthew tells us in chapter 6, verse 19, don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth because they just don't last. There's one true treasure, like a treasure in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again and sold everything to attain that treasure. Let's treasure hunt together, church, for the one true treasure. Let's dig deep and let's pursue him. Have a great week. God bless you.